Today in this video we're going to be seeing if aerating water causes algae, and by that I mean does algae come from air. In the previous few videos and tests I did, we found that there is no algae in my tap water, and we used distilled water as a control, and adding any one of these components to the water also does not grow algae unless algae is introduced to it. Also, in another video, we also determined that once you do add algae spores to water with all these components in here, it basically blooms. We've also found out that fish food does not grow algae either. So using all of that information we found in the last couple of tests, we're going to be seeing in this test if aerating the water and adding all these components will grow algae. So what I've actually done here is the same thing in the previous videos. I've added 1/4 teaspoon of this salty shrimp GHKH plus, because you can't just use distilled water to grow algae in because it needs some type of electrolyte. That was also found out in a previous video, and all those videos will be linked at the end of this one. I've added 1 milliliter of this Thrive S. This is just a general purpose aquarium fertilizer, and then 2 milliliters of this nitrogen. I found in the previous test that that is a really good concoction to get algae to start blooming very quickly. Although since we're going to be pulling algae spores from the air, possibly, it's going to take a little bit longer. So we're going to go ahead and put an aerator in here that I have already put in a bleach solution to make sure it's completely sterile. And then we're going to put this in my grow tent under some light for a little while. And then we're going to come back and see what happens. Alright, it has been a little over 1 month now, about a month and a week to be exact. And I am surprised to see that there is actually algae growing in this. This is what you would call brown algae or diatom algae, and it's kind of hard to see on video, but you can see that there's a slight brown tint. There's a very light coating of this brown algae growing in this container, and at this time what we're going to do is to see if we can get anything that is in there to bloom more. So what we're going to do is add 1 more milliliter of this general purpose fish tank fertilizer, and that's actually Thrive S, and about 2 milliliters of this nitrogen. And we're going to come back in an undesignated amount of time and see what happens. Okay, so it's been a little over a week since I've added the extra components to this water, and I have not seen any more or less brown algae in here. It's pretty much just been this brown diatom algae that has actually been growing in this, and not any green algae whatsoever, not any cyanobacteria, nothing like that. And this kind of makes sense because diatoms are pretty much, I think, one of the most abundant organisms on the planet. And they're extremely small, microscopic, and can float around in the air kind of like dust. And green algae, to me, from all these experiments, what that's basically telling me is green algae, sure, it can float around in cells or spores in the air as dust, and it really depends on the situation. But as far as how this is sitting in my basement here in a grow tent, and the air is not filtered, it's free flowing in through here, and it's not anywhere near my fish tanks, green algae of any type isn't really floating around in the air, at least not that abundantly. I'm sure that if you had this near a fish tank, you could probably get some sort of spores coming out of that and getting into this if it was close enough. But since it's so far away, the only thing I'm seeing is this brown algae. And this also kind of tells me that green algae of whatever type it might be, or cyanobacteria, is kind of treated almost like a bacteria or a virus, in the sense that it's more transferable through contact or close proximity through the air. So, if a person is sick and they come in contact with you, you can get ill. But if you're far away from them, the chances are pretty slim. And I think that green algae is kind of the same thing. So anytime you get a fish from the store, or plants from the store, or even driftwood of any type, no matter where it's from, there could be live cells on there, or organisms for that matter, that are in there, and it's just transferable no matter how many times you might rinse it or boil it or bleach it. Although maybe if you do it somewhat that extreme, boiling or bleaching, maybe that can reduce the risk of getting whatever is in there in your tank. But still, anytime you buy a fish from the store or anything like that, a single speck or droplet of water that came from another fish tank, or another source, or even just something that was on a piece of wood that was outside, all that is going to contain pretty much any living organism on there possible, and you put that in your tank and it just grows. But as far as getting coming just from the air or from anything else I've tested through this series of videos, it doesn't seem like to me that green algae just comes out of the air. So far it's just the brown diatom algae. So I think I might have missed something in this video, and I will leave it in the description or in a comment below to read later on for anyone who is interested in any more in this. In case I forgot to mention, this was an entire video series I did leading up to this one, and I might continue doing more later, but as of this time, this is pretty much the final test. That pretty much answered all the questions that I had about it anyways, and I hope that helps everyone else out there. So thanks for watching, and we'll see you in some other videos.